And the man sitting on top of the horse is Scanderbeg. He's the national hero of Albania. His Albanian name, Gjorgj Kastrioti. He sits on his horse looking north. He's looking towards his fortress, a city nearby called Kruja. And it's there his exploits earned him his place as one of the greatest military strategists the world has ever seen. And it was really no coincidence that this man became the national hero of Albania. So let's go to Kruja, check out some of his fortress, the story of Scanderbeg, and we've got a few other little specialties as well. So let's go. During the 1400s, there were many battles and skirmishes between Scanderbeg and the Ottomans. But in Kruja, today, I'm going to focus just on the three main sieges, the big sieges that the Ottomans waged against his fortress there. It's this part of the story that we're going to look at in Kruja. So Kruja is nestled halfway up a mountain. We're already quite high here, and it's a few more meters up to Kruja. And it's from this fortress that Scanderbeg, against overwhelming odds, was able to defend his castle against three major sieges from the Ottomans. It never fell while he was in charge. This was because of his guerrilla tactics, his alliances. He was very diplomatic. And also, he had a superior knowledge of the terrain. This gave him an enormous advantage over the Ottomans. So in 1443, the Ottomans were dealt a crushing blow by the Hungarians at the Battle of Nëse, which is in present-day Serbia. Scanderbeg was part of that contingent, and he took the opportunity to defect from the Ottomans, and he took with him some Janissaries who were also Albanian. He never forgot his homeland, and he returned here to this castle to stand against the onslaught that was about to hit this country. At the time he arrived, there were many competing large families, all jostling for number one position, and he knew that these divisions would not hold up against the Ottoman armies. So, in 1444, he called a conference of Leisure, which is a city just slightly north of Kruja. And there he made them all agree that they would share resources, share armies, and that he would be the number one amongst equals. In other words, he'd be the commander-in-chief of the armies. Everyone agreed, and they got ready for this large invasion that was about to happen. The Council of Leisure laid down the foundations for what would be an alliance amongst these families for over the next 2 decades. This is the gate of his castle at Kruja. Let's go in and have a look. So from 1444, the Conference of Leisure, up until 1450, various battles were fought between the Albanian forces and the Ottomans. But in 1450, Murad II, the Sultan, had had enough. He was going to solve this problem in Albania once and for all. He needed Albania as a launching pad to get to Italy. So he launched a massive invasion in 1450. He sieged this castle with cannons and men, with an army of anywhere between 100 and 150,000 people, depending on which sources you use. Scanderbeg's combined forces were anywhere between 10 and 15,000. That's a massive difference. Within the castle, a few men were placed, not a large contingent, under a commander called Conti. The plan was that Conti would hold the castle and Scanderbeg would be roaming around in the countryside, hassling the Ottoman Empire the Ottoman army as much as possible. He retreated to a mountain behind this large one behind us that gave him commanding views of the plains, and he could see what the Ottomans were doing. And he would attack where he thought there was a weakness. He disrupted their supply lines, and they had to buy food from the Venetians. Also, the Albanian people themselves, the peasants, the people working the fields, they were also trying to sabotage the Ottomans as much as possible. They were also part of this resistance. It was a combined effort, not just of military men, but the farmers. Everybody was standing up against the Ottomans. But Murad II, he tried to get this castle, and he even tried to bribe Conti, the general here, with no success. He wasn't successful, and in October 1450, he retreated. This first victory of Scanderbeg was really important because it solidified him in the eyes of his people and also foreign international supporters that he could do this job, that he was a good general, he was a great general, and that he could bring the fight to the Ottomans. So soon after Murad II retreated, he died. And his son, his successor, Mehmet II, took up the fight. And in 1466, Mehmet returned to Albania with an army about equal in size to his father's. But Mehmet had learnt from the mistakes of his father. And this time, he was ruthless. When he entered Albania, they massacred peasants because they knew that they were supplying Scanderbeg with the needed food. They laid waste to the land to make sure that they couldn't farm it and that Scanderbeg would be cut from supplies. And once again, they sieged this castle for the second time. Scanderbeg used the same tactics that were so successful in the first siege. Conti took charge of the castle once again, and Scanderbeg roamed the lands, annoying the Ottoman army as much as possible. With cannons, they fired against this castle. Now, you would think cannons in those days would very easily bring down a castle. It has to be remembered that this was new technology. And cannons, many of the cannonballs would either fall short or fly over the castle. And many of those large cannons could only be shot 2 to 3 times a day because they generated so much heat in the barrel. But regardless, Mehmet II, no matter how great a commander he is, he just wasn't a match for Scanderbeg, and he had to call off the second siege. To the south of here, he made a castle at Elbasan to ensure that he had a presence when he withdrew. This second siege really proved to everybody that Scanderbeg was the man. 2 sieges, both against the biggest army that was in Europe at the time, against a very small force of 10 to 15,000 men. 2 times, Scanderbeg was on a roll. Inside the castle walls, the museum offers a detailed account of Scanderbeg's life, his battles, and the historic sieges that took place here. In 1467, Mehmet II launched a third offensive against Kruja, hoping to crush the Albanian resistance. Despite Albania's exhaustion and limited resources, the castle held, and Scanderbeg's hit and run tactics kept the Ottomans at bay. Though some aid arrived from European allies, it wasn't enough to shift the balance. By year's end, disease and shortages forced the Ottomans to withdraw. Scanderbeg's third victory came at great cost. He died shortly after, in 1468, and Albania stood exposed to future Ottoman invasions. With Scanderbeg's death, Kruja was severely weakened, and the Ottomans launched their final siege on this castle and was successful in 1478. Without his leadership and being worn down by continual sieges by the Ottomans, the Albanians had no chance of holding this very important strategic position. And this marked the beginning of centuries of rule of the Ottomans in this area of the Balkans. Yet Scanderbeg's legacy lives on. His courage, loyalty, valour, strategy and patriotism has inspired generations. And with such virtues, it's no wonder that he is Albania's national hero. Yet most enduring of all is his banner, the double-headed eagle on a red background, which became Albania's national flag. Located within the Kruja Castle complex is the National Ethnographic Museum of Kruja. Housed in an 18th century Ottoman residency once owned by the Toptani family, the building showcases traditional architecture with its closed porch, courtyard and stone staircase. The museum highlights the region's crafts, customs and everyday life, using interactive storytelling, multimedia exhibits and virtual reality experiences.